protecting the portal by wearing a hat, beating Balthazar to death while his friends watch, devouring delicious necromite pods right under Myrkul's nose. Those tricks and much, much more that will make Act 2 of Honor Mode a breeze. Our first order of business is to get the Moonlantern, so head in through the mountain pass. Oh right, just like before, we won't be using any barrels. And you don't need any illithid powers.
Grab a torch, stay out of the dark, and move fast!
Thanks for the tip! Okay, our first order of business is a regular light source until we get the Moonlantern. So if you don't want to carry torches, then carry the Blood of Lyrthindor, and cast light on your weapons, or anything else you have handy. Sneak into this spot and clear out the cultist convoy. You'll surprise them, so it should be no sweat. Once you've got the place to yourself, play the Spider's Lyre to summon Karnas. He's so easy to abuse at this point, I almost feel bad for the guy. He'll just wait politely for you to talk to him, so you can easily position your party however you want and go into stealth to make the first attack. Since his friends are all dead, his shiny new legendary action is useless, and he'll never cast Sanctuary, making him a pushover. Not easy enough? Then you can pull the old Joaquin's Rest routine and cast Command Drop on him without triggering combat. If he fails the save, he'll drop both his sword and the Moonlantern, but will quickly pick them back up again if given the chance. To prevent this, position a melee character in stealth right next to Karnas before casting Command Drop. When the cast is successful, immediately activate turn-based mode. From here, you can pick up his sword, but if you grab the Moonlantern, it'll start the conversation with the pixie and Karnas will attack. So, the best course of action is to start the fight yourself by attacking from stealth, then pick up the Moonlantern before he can. With no weapons, Karnas is even more pathetic, being unable to use multi-attack and sometimes just skipping his turn entirely. Still not easy enough? What are you, playing solo or something? Okay, but this is where it starts to get stupid. If you do have a party with you, then hide him in this area, summon Karnas with the Lyre, then send your best archer back to where you sniped the convoy, ideally using one of these two weapons for automatic advantage. You will want to stand in a very specific spot, right here on this hole. But if you try to simply click there, it won't work. However, if you move your pointer past the edge and click this rock outcropping, you'll walk into the correct position. From here, just shoot the Drider with your ranged attack. You may even be able to get several shots off before he notices. When he does go into combat, he gets a little confused. Once he runs into the cage, as long as you don't move off of that spot, you can shoot him with your bow all day and he'll just sit there yelling at you. But despite all his rage, he's still just a... If you do happen to attack from a bit out of position, Karnas may jump up onto the ledge to join you. If that happens, just jump down to the lower level where he was, and he won't follow you. Your chance to hit will be a bit lower from down here, but it's just as easy to finish him off. And yeah, if you want to skip all of this combat and don't mind losing a chunk of XP, you can just summon Karnas through the conversation with the convoy, hit him with Command Drop, then drag the Moonlantern, and the sword if you want, into a container. The group will give you the stink eye for messing with his stuff, but they won't attack. After you've confiscated the Moonlantern, the convoy will run off into the shadows, but make sure they're completely gone before you loot the goods, or they will attack. If you want to save the Harpers, just teleport to Grimforge and take the elevator back up into Sharland. Don't forget to give them some extra light sources. And if you're using the Blood of Lyrthindor, you can sneak in to start the conversation from closer, so you'll catch more of the shadows with the blindness aura. You can pick up some easy XP from the Shadow-Cursed Ravens by moving way over here, and then throwing something with a bit of weight. Not directly at the Raven, but just a bit past it. This will jostle the corpse out of position, alerting its former friends. But since you're way back here, they won't see you. Wait for them to gather up in a pile, then activate turn-based mode. Since the birds have only 1 HP each, a simple Alchemist Fire will take out any in the radius. Then just use ranged attacks to pick off any survivors. Or if you've got void bulbs to spare, you may even be able to take out the entire group in one toss. Failing the perception check on the plant ambushes doesn't really mean much. They're not invisible, just hard to see. So walk around the perimeter to high ground and set up your own ambush. From this spot, you can fire off arrows without going into combat. If you hit a target twice in a row, the rest of the gang will all gather up to investigate. Once they're in a tight bunch, activate turn-based mode. They tend to wiggle around for a bit, so give them a moment to get it out of their system. From this point, you have a few options. If you have a strong AoE spell like Fireball, you can take out the whole group with one cast. If not, you can leverage the Needle Blight explosion to cause a chain reaction. Then just finish off any extras that were out of range of the group. And if all this sneakiness doesn't work out for you, then there's always the option to use the bridge as a choke point and pick them off that way. If one of the Needle Blights does manage to make it onto the platform, you can just pick it up and toss it at its friends. They're light enough that you only need 16 strength. And try to end your turn away from the edge of the platform to avoid the Vine Blight's constrict attack. For the other Blight ambush near Karnas, you can employ the same tactics, though you do have more Vine Blights to deal with this time. Look for chances to chain explosions, and use this ledge as a choke point. And finally, we have the Big Daddy plant ambush, the Shambling Mound. If possible, you want to make use of the ramp as a choke point. The best spell for this is Hunger of Hadar, combined with Wall of Fire for some easy extra damage. Spike growth also works well. The Shambling Mound is immune to the piercing damage, but the slow still helps. The important thing is to get the Needle Blights grouped up with the other enemies to maximize the use of explosion damage. Once you're down to just the mound left, you can make use of the fact that it has low dexterity to knock it on its knot hole. If all that sounds like too much work, there is another way. Head over to Oliver's house and, oh, by the way, to win the hide-and-seek game easily, keep your other party members out of the way, and when Mommy and Daddy spawn, just dash up and head to this spot, pass your turn twice, and then talk to Oliver. Okay, back to the big tree. Move only up to this spot, but stay behind this imaginary line. Then start taking pot shots at the blights like at the previous ambushes. Let the enemies bunch up and then use the explosion damage just as before. The Shambling Mound is immune to the explosions, but you can speed up the clearing of all the other enemies. As long as you always end your turn behind the line, none of the enemies on the ledge can hit you, even the mound's adhesive whip attack. If you do end up just a little too close and eat a whip, you won't get pulled all the way up to the ledge on the first hit. Just use your next turn to escape back behind the line where you belong. Since the Shambling Mound is immune to piercing damage, you can't just use a bow, so you need to find other damage sources. It may take a while, but you'll win eventually. And if you think this sounds boring, you're right. But you don't have to use every trick in the video, just pick and choose the ones you like. Next on the list of shadow ambushes is the Meazels. If you pass the perception check, you can easily make a sneak attack and surprise them. Keep the group close together to help finish off any Meazle that gets its grubby little hands on one of your party members. If you fail the perception check, you can always just stand outside the building until you detect a Meazle using Volo's Eye. Then still surprise attack them. And of course, there's also an easier way. Instead of attacking from the ground, jump up onto the roof at this corner. Even though the Meazles' vision cones are overlapping the roof, you won't go into combat. If you failed the perception check, you can still reveal the Meazles from up here using Volo's Eye. Head to the opposite corner of the roof and line your party members up as close together as you can get them along this ledge, with your worst ranged attacker last. Summon Scratch. Ungroup him and position him so that he blocks the last party member. put everyone other than Scratch into stealth, then shoot any Meazle to get your surprise attack. When Scratch's turn comes up, have him drink an invisibility potion, then pass his turn. If a Meazle teleports to the roof, it will look around for the invisible dog, but as long as Scratch went invisible before the Meazle got a turn, it won't use detecting presence. Since your other party members are blocked by Scratch, the Meazle just gives up and passes its turn, just like the rest of them on the lower level. Keep passing Scratch's turn to stay invisible and use everyone's ranged attacks to pick off all the Meazles. The reason you put your worst ranged attacker last is because they will be close enough to get disadvantage. Speaking of being close, it's important that the character at the end be positioned so that they're out of melee range of any Meazles. If you're close enough to melee it, it's close enough to garrote you. However, you can take advantage of this position if you have a melee character with an extra reach weapon like a spear or halberd. Just make sure you're attacking from the tip of its range. If you have Shovel available to summon, this all works even better, since you can just cast invisibility before the fight starts without needing a potion, and with no turn limit. Just make sure you position Shovel carefully since she's smaller than Scratch. Finally, if you failed the initial perception check and you don't have Volo's Eye, you can just fire an arrow at the spot where a Meazle is hiding and you'll still trigger a surprise attack on all of them. After finishing the Meazles, grab the luminous gloves from this chest and the Ring of Twilight, down here, past this tripwire, hidden under this shelf. The Shadow Mastiffs are pretty easy, but they're the last of the ambushes, so let's cover them real quick. When destroying the torches, save this one on the corner for last. Move the party way back here and go into stealth. Shoot the last torch from the maximum range that you can, and as soon as it's destroyed, quickly go into stealth before the dogs spawn in. Wait until they've all stopped moving, then head on over and attack the one Mastiff that's facing towards you to trigger a surprise. If you're able to kill that one dog before the rest get to take their turn, you'll clear a path for your melee characters to sneak in and open up on the closer targets. And if you think you might not be able to finish all of them off in 2 turns, you can also drop a light source on the ground before the fight to prevent the Mastiffs from using Shadow Blend. With this side of the map all clear, let's visit Last Light Inn. Don't miss this armor above Damon's barn, the Snowburst ring hidden in this room, or the Shield of Scorching Reprisal back here. This shield is actually a bit tricky to get. You have to pass a DC 18 perception check to find it, as well as have at least 15 strength to move the rocks out of the way. So if you want it, make sure you come prepared. Since you already have your own Moonlantern, you don't actually need to talk to Isobel at all. You're going to want her blessing before long, but you can put it off a bit if you feel your power level is too low to take on Marcus. To help boost that power up, let's take a quick trip to the shops at Moonrise Mall. High initiative is very helpful when dealing with Marcus, so you may want to pick up any of these items, especially the shield. In fact, even characters that don't have shield proficiency can make use of the initiative boost, but we'll cover that in a bit. Since you know Lan Tarv here is going to meet an unfortunate end later, don't forget that you can sell him something extra pricey now. Then, after he's dead, you can snatch that item back and— what? No vendor cheese. Already made a video about that. Another great vendor item here in Moonrise is the Drakethroat Glaive from Roa Moonglow. You can equip this weapon and cast its buff on any other weapon that you drop on the ground, melee or ranged. The elemental damage this gives can synergize with several other items. For example, adding frost damage will make your attacks trigger the effect from the Snowburst Ring and Winter's Clutches. When you're ready to tackle Marcus, there are many things you can do to make protecting Isobel easier. For starters, this smaller door is easy to block just by moving this vase in front of it. You can check to make sure it's really blocking the door by trying to walk past it. If you can't seem to get the single vase to block the door, then just use this other one too. You can significantly increase Isobel's defenses by buffing her with all sorts of spells, such as Warding Bond, Protection from Evil, and Mage Armor. You can also make use of an invisibility potion to protect her for the first turn. To do this, first, if you have Volo's Eye, send that character out of the room to go protect the Harpers. Why? Because the Eye will actually remove the invisibility from Isobel. When you've got everyone positioned how you want them, pick someone to talk to Isobel and put another character nearby. When you're ready for the fight, start the conversation with Isobel, but then immediately switch to the other character standing on the balcony. Throw an invisibility potion at Isobel, then enter turn-based mode before switching back to the character that's in the conversation. Doing this prevents Isobel from walking into the other room, keeping her farther away from most of the ghouls. Remember the Sentinel shield? Even if you don't have shield proficiency, you can put it on before a fight to get the initiative boost, then just unequip it on your first turn without using an action. On Marcus's turn, he won't be able to find Isobel, so he'll just attack you instead, giving you plenty of time to deal with him and the ghouls, including the ones attacking the Harpers. Once your other business in Last Light is done, climb on down into the Meanlock's house and pick up the Coruscation Ring from the chest. This ring is very powerful, especially when using spells with several hits like Magic Missile. It's even useful against the Meanlocks themselves, as it will keep them in constant bright light. Other light sources like the Blood of Lyrthindor or the Light Cantrip will also help, as well as Protection from Evil. You can even use Calm Emotions to prevent their fear aura from affecting you. When you're ready to fight them, make sure to get a surprise attack and stay in brightly lit areas to prevent them from using Shadow Teleport. Time to take on the rest of Moonrise Towers, and there's a lot to cover, so get comfortable. It's actually possible to kill every cultist that will show up during the assault without fighting more than one or two at a time, but it's a tedious process that I doubt most of you want to watch. So let's just take care of some of the easier and more impactful ones. When talking to Lincella in the kitchen, if you succeeded the wisdom check, you'll not only eliminate her for free, but also have the chance to persuade the gnolls to become friendly and help you later during the assault. The persuade and intimidate options require a 16, with the illithid option being wisdom 14. If you fail the check, you'll have to fight them, but better here than with a bunch of other cultists later. If you fail the initial wisdom check when talking to Lincella, you can still kill her and the remaining gnolls with a surprise attack. The bedroom has 3 more enemies that will show up later, and they're easy to take care of now. Walk outside through this door, then hide the party around the corner. Send one character to attack Mig from range, and only the Acolyte will link with her. Lure them outside, then use your waiting party members to sneak up and finish them off. Most cultists in the tower have this key on them, so make sure you loot it from one of them. And while you're out here, don't miss this box of treasure hidden behind a breakable wall. And now that the Zealot is all alone, you can easily sneak up and take him out. When you head up to the first floor, don't immediately talk to Zrel. Instead, take a right to enter her office and close the door behind you. The easiest way to eliminate scrying eyes is with thunder damage spells like Chromatic Orb or Shatter. Since Chromatic Orb is a level 1 spell, it can easily be upcast to increase your odds of a one-shot kill. Head back out and talk to Zrel. If you tell her to show you her power, she'll kill her own ogre guard for you. Finish the conversation and wait for her to walk into her office. In here, she's an easy target, so you can sneak up on her and go to work. Outside her office, you'll find 2 cultists having a chat. Acolyte Dane there will show up during the assault, so let's take her out. But you don't want to fight both of these guards at once, do you? To split him up, just yank Benel's chair out from under him and he'll walk off into Zrel's office, while Dane stays behind. You can follow him and eliminate him while he's all alone. Then just return to Dane and give her the same treatment. Chair yanking optional. In Balthazar's room, you'll want to pick up this extra Moonlantern and hang on to it for later. To get into the secret room, just click the musty tomes and stick a heart in the altar. If Gale is in the party, you'll have a couple extra options when you interact with the ritual circle. If you convince Gale to destroy the circle, he'll gain a unique buff until your next long rest. If you're feeling a bit darker, then tell Gale to craft a Shadow Lantern and combine a dead pixie and broken Moonlantern. When you're done in here, head out through this door onto the balcony. You can actually get into Ketheric's room through this door, but you'll have to pass a DC 30 lockpicking check. If you don't want to bother with that, then take a quick hop back down to the main floor. Just inside, make a left and climb this ladder up onto the rafters. Take a quick detour to have a friendly talk with the Absolute if you want, though you should pick someone that doesn't rely on attack rolls if you're not planning to long rest in the near future. Continuing along the rafters will take you to these roots that lead back up just outside Ketheric's room. Even though this mimic itself has bludgeoning resistance, the chest it's disguised as is vulnerable to bludgeoning damage and has only 50 hit points. Any damage done to this chest on the first attack will be conveyed to the mimic based on the percentage of its health. This means that if you can do at least 25 bludgeoning damage in one attack, you'll one-shot the chest and the mimic along with it. That key you looted from the guards downstairs lets you into Ketheric's room with no lockpicking needed. If you have Speak with Animals on, you can placate Squire with no skill check if you have Isobel's Blessing or if you're carrying Scratch's Ball. Just make sure to pick the option saying, I only want to stop the Absolute. Without Speak with Animals, having the Blessing or Ball will lower the DC for the skill checks from 18 to 14. Whichever method you use, if you succeed, then Squire will no longer show up during combat with Ketheric at the top of the tower. On that note, this chest has a letter that will open up a new conversation option when you confront Ketheric. However, reading it also gives an inspiration point for sages like Gale, so if you already have 4 points saved up, you can wait until later to actually read it. Don't worry, I'll remind you when we get there. Let's take a break from the killing for a bit and strike up a conversation with Araj about blood. If you're not familiar with her, she makes a special elixir for each character that talks to her with a unique effect based on their race. Here's the full list of elixirs if you want to pause the video and take a look. Many of them are useful, but these two make a particularly powerful combination, especially if you plan to chat with some Thorms in the near future. These elixirs can be used by any character and stack with any other normal elixir or any number of other blood elixirs. The one drawback to consuming them is the debuff that you get the next time you long rest, but since that debuff is also removed on a long rest, just partial rest immediately after to clear it. When first talking to Araj, succeeding at the passive history check can lead to a tidy sum of gold, so you'll want to talk to her with whichever character has the best history score, along with any buffs to intelligence checks you might have handy. If you pass the check, you can grill her about her intentions and blackmail her into giving you 200 gold for each elixir she makes for you, which can be quite a few. Not only can you get an elixir for each party member you have here, you can also return to camp and swap in any other companion characters you have waiting. But more than that, you can also get an elixir from every one of the available hirelings. And since they only cost 100 gold to hire, or 0 gold, you'll make a profit from each one in addition to all the extra elixirs.
Just a little prick and it's all over. Close your eyes.
Talking to Araj with Astarion in the party will give you the opportunity to bully him into biting her in exchange for this very powerful potion. Astarion will always confront you about it the next time you rest in camp, but if you're in a romance with him, this conversation is a minefield of choices that lead to him breaking up with you. To avoid that outcome, you need to pick these 4 specific conversation options. Once you get to this 5th choice, any one you pick will work to maintain the romance. Okay, back to killing cultists. Down here in the prison, you'll want to clear out the guards near the cells before freeing the gnomes and tieflings. You can destroy the patrolling scrying eyes with thunder damage again, though you'll need a place to hide after each kill to wait for the others on patrol to give up looking for you. Then, just ambush the adept once the eyes are out of the way. If you have at least 12 strength, you can also just toss each scrying eye in a hole, though killing them this way will cause you to be marked as an enemy of the Absolute in Act 3. When it comes to the adept, you can toss her too if you've got 20 strength, or just give her a helpful shove. The warden will actually show up during the assault, so all the more reason to take her out now. But before you climb the ladder in her room, you'll want to kill this last zealot, or he'll somehow see you snooping around up there. Pop the eye with thunder damage and then loot the place at your leisure. When you're ready to free the prisoners, either toss Wilburn a hammer or just bust the walls down yourself. Wait until they run out the back to open the cell doors and join them at the boat to see him off. After you're done in the prison, head through this door to reach the docks for a bit more cleanup. 2 of these 4 cultists will be part of the assault, so it's a good idea to snuff them out. 3 of the guards have linked aggro, but if you wait until each is at the farthest end of their patrol, you can sneakily kill them without actually going into combat with the other 2. With the 2 patrollers out of the way, you can single out that last zealot as long as you wait until he's moved far enough away from the nearby acolyte. Once he's down, just finish off that last poor sap and gain easy access to the barrel of tadpoles. If you're into that sort of thing. Our last cultist clearing business takes us back up to the first floor. Stash the party away in Zrel's former office and send one person out to talk to Radija in this spot so that she turns and faces completely away from the office door. With that done, head back into the office, go into stealth, and shoot one of the closer 2 skeletons. Even though Radija is standing right there, she and her other skeleton won't see what you're up to. Finish the 2 skeletons off with ranged attacks or lure them into the office, but don't walk out through the office door. Because of the angle Radija is facing after you talk to her, you can go into stealth while standing in this corner. If Radija actually gets a turn, she can be a bit annoying, so using a character with at least +6 bonus to initiative will ensure that you get the first turn. Kill the skeleton first, not only to clear its vision cone out of the way for the rest of your party, but also because attacking Radija first can sometimes cause the scrying eye in the nearby room to detect you. Sneak your other party members in and finish her off. Did I say that was our last business in Moonrise? Well, we've got 1 stop left. Now that there's no one guarding this door, we have easy access to the rooftop. Susdera and all of the Necromites that would be part of the fight with Ketheric can be eliminated right now without pulling the invulnerable Ketheric into combat. After starting the conversation with her, you can swap to another party member to walk right up and give her the smackdown. Pick off any Necromites that you can from range, but let the distant ones come to you. If you go too far past the top of the stairs, you will be close enough to get Ketheric's attention, so play it safe. Because of this, it's a good idea to save this for your very last piece of business in Moonrise, since aggroing Ketheric can make the entire tower permanently hostile to you. Not easy enough? You can solo the whole lot by just surprising Susdera from range and then dropping a wall of fire on her. Don't open with wall of fire or she'll run off and tell Ketheric. Retreat back through the door and move to this spot. The skeletons upstairs will all run into the fire and immolate themselves. Once it's just Susdera left, you can pop back through the door, shoot her once, then pop back down again before ending your turn. Just repeat that routine on each turn until she's dead. You don't have wall of fire? Well, do you have a bow? Because moving in and out of the door will not cause attacks of opportunity, even if you're surrounded by skeletons. And using ranged attacks won't trigger their Armor of Agathis, even if they're right next to you. If any skeletons get stuck trying to figure out how to reach you, just tuck yourself into this corner and end your turn to lure them toward you. Then get right back to dancing. It's not quick, but it sure is effective. Okay, now we're done in Moonrise Towers. In the Masons Guild, you'll need to pass a DC 10 perception check to detect the lock. You can use the key, if you got it from Mattis, or just lockpick it. And if you don't have the key, can't pick the lock, or didn't even pass the perception check, well, don't let that stop you. For dealing with the shadows, make use of any light sources you can, and focus on taking out the Wraith first. If any of the shades turn invisible, the old ping trick still works, but patch 6 changed it just a little. The default ping binding won't work anymore because right-clicking on a portrait will bring up the menu, but you can just set an alternate keybind for ping and click that to reveal the position. Finally, the coruscation ring works wonders here since the shadows can't teleport or shadow blend while illuminated, and the Wraith's aura can't extinguish radiating orb. Once you're done with the shadows, you've got another perception check to pass to get into this room with a few useful items, including these scrolls that are going to come in handy later. And before you leave, you're going to want to grab the very useful hat from this chest. If you can't be bothered with disarming the trap and picking the lock, there are other ways of getting it open. Between the Masons Guild and House of Healing, you'll find this skeleton with the first of a pair of rings. The matching ring is inside the House of Healing on a skeleton here. These allow you to cast Warding Bond on the wearer of the matching ring. Once the buff is cast, you can unequip the rings and even hand them to the other two characters and create another pair of buffs. Since any class can equip these rings, you can use other forms of damage reduction like Barbarian Rage to reduce the shared damage taken, leading to some questionable mathematics. And yeah, you can go full cheese and use other companions and hirelings in camp to cast Warding Bond on every party member, but we're not going to go that far, right? Speaking of the House of Healing, it's Thorman time! Sorry, okay. If you plan to talk them to death, you'll want to long rest first to make the best use of buffs. Head to the center of town and click the north, then west, then east plaques to open the entrance to the Shar Sanctuary. You can get a +5 buff to each mental stat in here, but Charisma is the one we're after. If you want Shadowheart to do your Thorm talking, then this will be real easy, as she can get each buff with no checks. Anyone else will need to make a DC 14 Charisma saving throw. If you fail, not only do you not get the buff, you get a -5 Charisma debuff, and you'll anger the Sanctuary's defenders, so you really want to stack the odds in your favor. There are many buffs and consumables that will boost your saves, as well as a slew of items like these. Corallin's Grace will only work if you're not wearing anything classified as armor, but you can wear a shield. Though if you have it, you probably want to use Shadeclinger armor, which needs a special mention. It just so happens that the other two statues are in darkness, so the buff from the armor is active in range to click them. Unfortunately, the Charisma statue is under bright light, deactivating the buff. There are two ways to deal with this issue. When you're ready to make the saving throw, switch characters to someone who can give you useful buffs, then shoot an arrow of darkness at their feet to activate the armor. Then quickly switch back to the conversation and make the roll. As for the other method, well, the Shadeclinger armor has been bugged for a long time. Once you gain the buff from standing in darkness, you can unequip the armor and the buff will last until long rest, regardless of the lighting conditions. This means you can even combine the buff with the one from Corallin's Grace. A lot of the tricks in this video are bending the rules pretty far, but this one seems like a bit too much. You'll just have to decide for yourself. Rogues get easier checks in all 3 Thorm conversations, so if you want it to go smoothly, take Astarion and his happy buff. And if a respec just for this task isn't too cheesy, then you'll want to set him up just like this. At level 1, set Dexterity to 16, Intelligence to 14, and Charisma to 17. The last 2 points don't matter. For skills, you'll want Proficiency in Sleight of Hand, Investigation, Performance, and Persuasion, with Expertise in Sleight of Hand and Investigation. At level 3, select the Arcane Trickster subclass with the Friends cantrip and Disguise Self spell. At level 4, take an Ability Improvement feat and bump your Charisma up to 19. For level 6, put your Expertise in Performance and Persuasion. And if you've reached level 8, then take another Ability Improvement feat, increasing Dexterity to 18. These items are all useful for the upcoming conversations, especially the Graceful Cloth. If you got the Shapeshifter's Boon Ring from the Strange Ox in the Grove, you can activate it with the Disguise Self spell you picked up even if you don't have the Deluxe Helmet. Starting in patch 6, triggering a conversation will always default to your party leader if they're in range, even if another character is closer to the NPC. So if you want to converse with the Thorms as a companion, you'll need to ungroup the party leader and move them out of range. But if you're depending on the leader to provide any buffs during the conversation, make sure to precast them before moving in. Before talking to the toll collector, send all of your gold to camp, just in case things go horribly wrong. Toss her a gold piece, then tell her you won't give her any more to reach these skill checks. There are many different class options that can appear here, all at DC 18, but only the Rogue leads to another DC 18, while all others will be 21. You'll get advantage on the first check automatically, but you'll want to cast Friends for the second. When you're ready to converse with Malice Thorm, head around the outside of his room and into his back office first. Reading this book will lower the last skill check from a DC 21 to 18. Once again, ungroup the party leader and move them away from the party. With all your bonuses to investigation, you're nearly guaranteed to make this check, but even if you somehow do fail it, you can still take the persuasion option anyway. On the last set of choices, ignore that rogue option and just pick this persuade to finish him off.
Yes, submit I must into the lady's dark-fingered embrace.
Finally, we have old Isobel. With this rogue setup, you should pick the Sleight of Hand check over the Constitution save. For the performance checks, be aware that the checks get easier the farther down the list of choices you go, so pick the lowest option you have, making use of Friends as usual. Pass that third Sleight of Hand check and you're good to go. If you're not going the rogue route, there are a few extra tips that may help. Grab this key from the skeleton on top of the toll house and then head down to the basement. Pass the DC 10 perception check to open this hidden room and find, among other things, this logbook that will add an intimidation option to the conversation with the toll collector. It's not any easier to make than the other skill checks, but it does allow you to use thaumaturgy to assist. Without the dedicated rogue respec, you may also want to combine these two blood elixirs to become a skill check making machine. For Malice, you should still start with the investigation or religion checks first, since passing them skips the persuasion and failing them leads to no penalty. When talking to Isobel, you probably want to select the Constitution save option, since the Sleight of Hand checks are a higher DC than they are for a rogue. You can use all the same bonuses to saving throws that were covered in the Shar Sanctuary. If you don't have proficiency in Constitution saves, the Dwarven Blood Elixir will buff you long enough to make all 3 saves. In addition, you can use the Shadeclinger armor without exploiting, since the spot you stand to carry on the conversation is in shadow. If you don't have any armor that gives advantage on Constitution saves, you can also use a potion of gaseous form. Even though the tooltip says you can't talk, as long as you're already in the conversation when you drink it, you'll carry on just fine. You can actually fail 2 out of the 3 Constitution saves without leading to combat, though for each one you fail, you'll get a debuff that lasts until long rest and will severely hamper your ability to pass the remaining charisma checks. Not just in this conversation, but also the others. For that reason, it's a good idea to save Isobel for last so that you can long rest without losing important buffs you need to finish the other conversations. Only failing all 3 saves will lead to combat, with a pretty unpleasant way to start it too. But let's say you prefer fightin' to talkin'. Well, there's tricks for that too. You can open up on the zombies to take some of them out before Isobel waddles his way into range. His damage type will change to the first element he's hit with each turn, but if he takes 2 different kinds of damage in the same turn, the type will always change to necrotic. Since the whole party has necrotic resistance from Isobel's blessing, it's the simplest way to avoid taking too much damage from his regurgitation. Just keep kiting him around and healing his barf target until his resistances drop, then finish him off. Not easy enough? Wanna solo him? If you've got any kind of non-physical damage, like a cantrip, just attack a zombie from range, then retreat into this small room and hide around the corner. You'll have to deal with the zombies that funnel in, but Isobel himself is too fat to fit through the doorway. Once all the zombies are down, just peek around the doorway, fire off some damage at Isobel, and then hide in the corner again before ending your turn. And repeat. Though if you have a source of persistent damage like Wall of Fire, you can speed the process up quite a bit. If you're not actually solo, you can have a friend waiting in the room to help you with the zombies, but you can't squeeze in more than 1 extra without giving Isobel a target he can hit through the doorway. If you are playing solo and don't have a cantrip available, you can always use the Nair Misser. If you don't have proficiency with hand crossbows, it'll take a long time, but you'll come out on top in the end. Hey, I said easy, I didn't say fast. If you have at least 5,001 gold, move all of it to your party leader, since we're about to give it away. Oh, relax, we're gonna get it all back, with extra. Starting with this lets you move around the room unhindered, as well as giving you this signed trade visa that you can sell for another couple hundred gold. You have free reign to explore the area and loot all the gold and other treasures. When you're ready to get your gold back, the easiest way is to just shove Goldilocks out the window. Just send your best shover to this spot, then wait for her to move next to the ledge. Activate turn-based mode, enter stealth, and then put your weight on it. Make sure you see a blue line pointing out into the distance before shoving. You should do enough damage that you only need to kill 1 skull to weaken her enough for a one-shot finish. If you don't have a best shover, then just combine these 2 elixirs and now you do. Or if you've got a decent spell DC, you can use Thunder Wave instead of shove. In fact, it'll knock her so far away that she may die just from the fall. And if you don't want to leave your fate up to gravity, you can also fight her the old-fashioned way. This side door can be opened up by picking the lock or just slashing it down. In here, just position the party back toward the middle of the room, then drag this convenient candelabrum in front of the door. Shoot Goldie Hawn to start the fight, then join the rest of the party at a safe distance from the door. Tubby will get stuck in the doorway, so just pick away at her from range. The skulls will all go up on the roof for some reason. Doesn't matter, just ignore them. You can even move into melee range to get some damage, but make sure you don't use melee damage if she's about to hit a 100 hit point threshold. If you're within 4 meters when she loses a piece of armor, you can be turned to gold even if she's prone. Her regular melee swings are weak, so just eat the opportunity attack to retreat to a safe distance and strip her armor from range. What, that method's too slow and boring? Alright, how about a middle ground? Move just 1 character into the room and block the door, with the rest of the party hiding far away on top of the roof. Shoot Goldfinger to start the fight, then just pass your turns until the skulls have all gathered up on top of the roof. Then sneak your other party members over and wallop the skulls. You may be tempted to use AoE damage to take several out at once, but if you kill more than one skull with the same attack, Golden Goose will only lose one piece of armor. So just use single target attacks to eliminate each one, then one last attack to finish off Goldman Sachs. Whichever method you use to take her out, don't forget to get your gold back. And to loot a couple hidden treasure rooms. If you fail the perception check on this escape button, just fast travel out of there. And finally, if you want to engage the good doctor in combat, then skirt around the side of the room and up these routes to this platform and go into stealth for a surprise attack. You can drop an AoE on them, but they're all resistant to fire, so Fireball won't be too impressive. Go with a spell like Ice Storm if you have it, or just use a regular ranged attack if that's the best you've got. Use your surprise round to pick off as many of the nurses as you can, then go to work on Malice. He'll waste his turn just reviving a nurse, so put her back to bed and then return your attention to the dock. Repeat until he's done for. If you're a bit low on damage and don't finish off all the nurses before they start running around, you may end up with Malice trying, and failing, to figure out how to reach you on the platform. You can actually climb down, do some melee damage, soak an opportunity attack, then climb back up. As long as you end your turn on the platform, he'll stay confused. And let's just say you want an easy way to solo him. First, you'll speed things up a bit by stashing these nurse corpses back in camp. But if they're too heavy to pick up, use the Club of Hill Giant Strength from the Arcane Tower. Climb back up the routes to the platform and get in your surprise attacks. But before you end your second turn, climb the rest of the way up the routes into the library and out onto the roof toward the east. You'll need to fight off any nurses that find their way up here, but the doctor himself will stay downstairs. When there are no more nurses in range, move close to the hole in the roof and fire shots down at the doctor. If he revives a nurse, be sure to finish your turn at a decent distance away from the hole, since the nurses can actually toss a vial of poison at you from all the way down there. Keep focusing your attacks on Malice, even when nurses are alive. They'll slow you down a bit by healing him, but you should be able to outpace it with your damage. And each nurse may get bored after a bit and join you on the roof, where you can take care of them from outside revive range. After lots of shots, the doctor will be no more. Again, easy, not fast. Before you assist Halsin with the portal defense, there's a bit of preparation to do. For starters, take a moment to dig up this buried chest. Believe it or not, it's important for the coming fight. Remember that extra Moonlantern you looted in Moonrise? You can drop it on the ground here to provide a light that prevents the shadows from going invisible. Unlike most other light sources, the Wraith's aura cannot extinguish it. Grease and Sleet Storm are both great in this fight to slow down the encroaching enemy forces. But the real star of the show is Avard's Black Tentacles. To maximize its effectiveness, you'll need to don the right headgear. The Arcane Acuity buff can boost your spell DC to a crazy level, to the point of making your spells impossible to save against by some enemies, since rolling a 20 on a saving throw is not an automatic success. With your hat on, shoot any of the nearby objects that have a health bar until you've stacked the buff to 10. Then, quickly talk to Halsin to pause the timer on the buff. As soon as the conversation ends, quickly enter turn-based mode and cast Black Tentacles right in this spot. You want to position as close to the bushes as you can while still overlapping and highlighting the fishing pole on the left and the pile of dirt around the chest you dug up on the right. In this position, even the archers will be trapped so far from the portal that they can't attack it. You won't even need the old Arrow of Darkness on the portal trick, though you can still use it for extra insurance if you want. Even if one of the enemies somehow manages to make their save, the tentacles still create difficult terrain that will slow them to a crawl. Now, relying on this one spell to wrap up nearly all the enemy forces does come with risks, primarily maintaining concentration. So whoever is going to cast it should use buffs to concentration saves and ideally have high AC and initiative to leave more appealing targets in the path of the shadows. Oh, and of course, remember not to cast any other concentration spell during the fight. Speaking of those shadows, melee can sneak up on them from behind, with the Blood of Lyrthindor proving particularly useful. Not only can it blind any of the enemies in this fight, you can also use Sunbeam to clear out most of the birds and vines that spawn. Then use Magic Missile, conveniently provided by the Near Misser, to clean up the rest. Or you can ignore the birds and let them waste their turn dashing to the portal, then use an Alchemist Fire to take out most of them. Or if you set up a wall of fire right here, most of the birds and vines will be instantly killed right when they spawn, as well as do some extra damage to the shadows. If those shadows do manage to turn invisible, you can use the old ping trick to find them and light them up. And if you get hit by a strength drain that leaves you encumbered, remember that you can send items from your bag back to camp without spending an action. Once you finish off the second set of shadows on turn 3, you can move your party away from the enemies trapped in the tentacles and just pass your turns until you win for free. Though you may want to fire off some shots with the Black Tentacles caster to keep your acuity stacked to 10. Hunger of Hadar doesn't count as a surface, so you can cast it on top of the tentacles as a backup. You can also add in some grease for further protection, just don't cast it too close to any fire. Say you don't have any character that has light armor proficiency to wear the Helm of Arcane Acuity. In that case, you can use a different hat. Using the Drake Throat Glaive to add thunder damage to your ranged weapon will allow the same acuity stacking routine. Don't have the Avard's Black Tentacle spell? Yes, you do. Just inside the front entrance of the morgue is a hidden button to open this secret room, where you'll find this neckpiece in the chest. If you somehow fail the perception check to reveal the button, if no one saw it, did you really fail it? Though you will have to fast travel out. There's a bit more business to conduct in the morgue, but it's easier if you go in the back door. Take a right in front of the mausoleum entrance and head down to this ledge. From up here, shoot any kind of AoE arrow down into this spot to reveal all the fish in the area without going into combat. As long as you stay up here, you can eliminate every single one of the little fish and one of the chiefs. For the last chief, you can climb down and shoot him from long range and you still won't go into combat, though you can go ahead and send in the others to speed things up. With that taken care of, loot your 2 lightning jabbers and proceed into the ominous crevice. There's some oozes down at the bottom that you can clear out, though the reward is nothing too special. But the back entrance into the morgue is up top. Use the Club of Hill Giant Strength if you need help clearing the gaps, and trade it around to any other party members that also need a boost. After the second jump, just press this button to open the door into the morgue and get the drop on the zombies. If you've got any persistent damage spells, this spot makes a great choke point. Toss the zombie bodies on top of the vents to lower the gas level, and you can disarm the vents to further increase the chance that the companion AI will actually follow you. In this side room, grab the key to the necrotic lab. And if you have Shadowheart or Gale in your party, reading Olam's journal will give both of them an inspiration point. If you're full on points, just pick it up for later. Head into the lab and ignore that lever since we already opened the back door, though the surgeon's research notes will provide another inspiration point to Gale. The important prize in this room is inside this chest, the Eversight Ring, which will come in handy later. After talking to Oliver, it's time to hop in the portal, right? Not so fast. If you do, you'll be thrust right into combat, and who wants that? Instead, fast travel to Wraithwind Town and walk west to the Wraithwind Masons Guild. From here, you have two options. You can sneak up into the clearing and land a surprise attack on Mummy and Daddy, which will also lead to the Shadow Friends spawning in surprised. This gives you a chance to sneak other party members into position and drop the hammer, or in this case, fire. But there's another option that makes it even easier. From the Masons Guild spot, go back to camp and wait about 10 seconds. Then hop back to town. Daddy thought you left for good and started to head home. Because he's moved away from Oliver, shooting Daddy from long range will only pull him and Mummy without starting combat with Oliver. Keep your distance and let the two shadows come to you before finishing them off, leaving Oliver all alone. From here, just make use of this choke point to drop spells like Spike Growth or Hunger of Hadar to slow and kill most of the shadows, and pick off the few that make it through. If you do have Wall of Fire, placing it in the right spot will win the fight for you. Move the party far enough away onto the stairs and the owlbear won't go into combat with you when it spawns. Oliver will keep popping out Shadow Friends straight into the fire until his shield goes down. After that, just move in close to trigger his conversation and end the fight. The correct order to push the buttons to enter the Gauntlet of Shar is right here in this book. Moonrise, Grief, then General. Sure, you can walk between the force fields to click the button, but who cares? Just bust this door down and move on to the cloaker. All you need is a single ranged attacker to shoot the cloaker from up here. Even if you fail the perception check, you can just shoot the spot where it's hiding. If you're in this position, the phantasms it spawns will just float around staring at you, but will never think to actually fly up to you and attack. Just plug away at the cloaker until it goes down. Afterward, chop your way through this door too and head inside. Kill a couple rats to get this rat good and angry at you, then kill him too. It'll be important later. Let's get this out of the way. Yes, you can sneak up to Balthazar's door to open it and trick him into fighting the Justicars, but wow does it take a long time. It's not worth it unless you're doing a solo run, and even then you may like one of the upcoming methods more. Speaking of, it's possible to completely skip the fight against the Justiciars by shooting one of the skeletons from outside the range of the conversation trigger. If you happen to kill the skeleton in one shot, the cutscene will begin. But if you don't skip through it, the skeletons that are looking for you in the background will find you and start combat, cancelling the cutscene before the Umbral Tremors have a chance to spawn. You can avoid that weirdness by hitting the skeleton with something that will start combat but do no damage. Skipping the conversation in this way will leave you with a locked door though, that you'll have to find a way to open if you want to walk in and chat with Balthazar. Which you may not actually want to do, but we'll get to that later. For now, let's do this whole Justiciar business the normal way. Spread your party around the outside of the room before you trigger the conversation with the skeletons, leaving you in a good spot to take out Umbral Tremors as soon as the fight starts. Since you triggered this fight without ever talking to the other group of skeletons inside the normal entrance, they'll run into the room and join the fight, which also skips the smaller battle against the Justiciars down the hall. Talk to Balthazar and hopefully convince him to hand over his bell. We'll be back to deal with him later, so take a hike for now. But if you got a way through the door, don't forget to grab the treasures out of this room, particularly the Callous Glow Ring, which is another item that combos very well with multi-hitting spells like Magic Missile. We're on the way to Yurgir, but stop before you go down these stairs, because there are 3 main methods for dealing with him that we need to discuss. Method number 1. If you've got a party member that's really persuasive, send them in alone while the rest of the party stays well out of range. If your character is not a bard or warlock, they will need to make a passive DC 14 insight check to even access the options to talk Yurgir and his friends to death. Persuading him to kill the Maragons is DC 16, but the final two options to kill the Displacer Beast and Yurgir himself are both DC 21. If your persuasion skill is high and you've got some inspiration points to spare, then go for it. If you do fail the roll, then why do you think we left the rest of the party far away? Sneak them in and stab Yurgir in the back. If that party member is only a little bit persuasive, you can go in and try for just the DC 16 persuade to kill the Maragons, then pull the same party swap trick to ambush Yurgir without actually starting combat during the conversation. Finally, if you fail the passive insight check, you do have one last chance to either swap to the party to at least surprise the Maragons, or you could gamble on the DC 16 persuade to convince Yurgir that you'll help him out. Succeed and the room goes friendly. Fail and it's too late to send in the troops while the enemies get a surprise round on you, which is not good. And speaking of making them friendly, method number 2. Leave the rest of the party behind and head down to Rat Town. Since you angered the rats by killing them earlier, they'll already be out and about and ready to be picked off. Jump up onto this sniper perch and fire away, starting with one of the closest rats at the front to minimize scampering. Your hardest battle in this area will actually be against the camera, so switching to tactical may help. A total of 4 new waves of rats will spawn, so be sure you've seen that many pop up and you've killed everyone in range before you stop shooting. At this point, you'll have just a few rats left, with one hiding at a very awkward angle behind the statue. You may not be able to get a clear shot with a bow, but you can hit it with an alchemist's fire. Once that's done, you gotta climb back down to this spot to hit the last 4. If you shoot from left to right and kill the rat closest to the statue last, the boss rat will also spawn there and can be tough to get a clear shot at. Instead, shoot the rats from right to left, killing the one farthest from the statue last. This spawns the boss rat in a spot that's easy to hit, giving you the full XP and loot for free. Just ignore that talking rat, he's already dead. If you actually want to fight Lyrthindor fair and square, just wait until you have one normal rat left, then climb down and shoot it on the lower level to spawn the boss. Or if you want the fight to be even less fair or square, and faster, then you'll need access to Cloud of Daggers and immunity to sleep, either from an Elixir of Peerless Focus or a racial passive. Stand in this corner spot and drop Cloud of Daggers right here. Then shoot one of the rats to start the fight. Just sit back and watch as the rats all dive straight into the blades. When your turn actually pops up, just pass it and keep watching the show. If you end up with any stray rats left, don't be tempted to shoot them or you'll just spawn the boss. Instead, let the rat run into the daggers and the boss rat will also spawn right into the cloud and be instantly killed. Other area damage like spike growth or wall of fire will kill all the normal rats, but the boss will not spawn into it and die for free the way he does with Cloud of Daggers. What happens if you're not immune to sleep? This. With Lyrthindor eliminated, you can return to Yurgir's room and he'll be friendly, even if you've never talked to him. At this point, if you actually do talk to Yurgir, you'll immediately trigger the quest completion for letting him escape with no other option. This will deny you most of the XP, his loot, and royally piss off Astarion. So pissed, in fact, that you'll need to pass a DC 14 Persuasion or DC 16 Deception just to prevent him from leaving the party. And you'll end any romance with him even if you pass the check. So unless you really want Yurgir to help you in Act 3, do not talk to him here. If you climb up to this higher ledge, you can get the drop on him with a sneak attack, surprising all of the Maragons in the process. If you win initiative, you may even be able to burn him down before he can act. Though if not, knocking him prone is also very helpful since he can't drop his bombs at low health if he's lying down. Speaking of bombs, if he tosses any up at you, don't forget that you can toss him right back on his head. As for the Maragons, well, they're pretty dumb. If you stay in the middle of the platform, most of them will gather up on the floor below, unable to hit you. Just poke your head out over the edge, take some pot shots, then retreat back to the middle until you've taken them all down. The Displacer Beast is a little smarter and may join you up on the ledge. Now, if you don't win the initiative, the fight may not go so smoothly. Yurgir will start running around causing trouble and also dropping bombs that the Maragons will throw at you for big damage. Of course, you can improve your chances by using Elixir of Vigilance, but if only there was some other way to boost initiative. If you got the Quaneth Psionic Detector from Voss and have it in your bag, it will alert you when a Githyanki ambush is near. Getting very close to that ambush will also trigger a buff. You may think this buff should be used against the Gith, but attacking from stealth will already give you advantage. And unlike Yurgir, none of them have alert, so you'll also get a surprise round to take them down without much trouble, making the buff mostly redundant. But once you get the buff, it only lasts until your next attack or until you leave stealth, so it would take forever to get anywhere else with it, right? Well, it deactivates if you manually leave stealth, but not if it's removed for you. When you port to Last Light, you'll be seen by the Harpers and your stealth will be cancelled without losing the buff. Then just fast travel back into the Gauntlet of Shar and return to Yurgir's room. You will also lose the buff if you go into stealth, or if you throw something. But it's worth it to sacrifice the buff on one character, ideally a caster, so that you can start the fight from stealth and trigger a surprise on everyone other than Yurgir himself. Combined with the other 3 party members all taking their turn before Yurgir, that may be enough to kill him in one round. If you can't knock him prone, he'll still get a chance to spit out his bombs, even if he doesn't get a turn. Because you surprised the Maragons, you can use the extra time to move your party to the far side of the platform and finish the fight while out of bomb throwing range. And method number 3, the full cheese. Before walking onto the stairs, hide the rest of the party out of range, then shoot the Displacer Beast to go into combat with the whole room. Finish the Displacer Beast off without jumping down to the lower level yet. Once it's dead, jump down and hide right in this spot, as close to the wall as you can get. Pass your turn and let the Maragons start to gather along the ledge. On your next turn, walk just far enough that you can peek around the corner and get a clear shot. It's important that you preserve enough movement speed to get back to that specific hiding spot around the corner at the end of each turn. If you stick to the right position, none of the enemies will figure out how to reach you and will all pass their turns. If you're having a hard time hitting them due to the darkness, feel free to throw a torch up there to brighten up the atmosphere. Just repeat this process of peeking, shooting, and hiding. If you're getting too bored, you can drop some persistent damage on top of the Maragons to speed it up a little. And always be sure to pick your position carefully before attacking. Don't let the auto-targeting move you too far out of position. Once you're down to the last 2 Maragons, start splitting your damage between them. Why? Because the very last Maragon alive will jump down to attack you, and you want it to be easy to finish him off. When it's just Yurgir left, shoot him in the same way on the turns that he's visible, and just stay hidden and pass your turn when he's not. Ignore his bombs when his health dips low and just keep firing away until he goes down. Have I already mentioned easy, not fast? I think so. In the soft step trial, just lockpick the right door, or smash it open. Go down to the end of the hall, open the last gate, and deposit one character in the room before returning the rest to the entrance. Activate the trial, swap to that waiting character, snag the gem, and peace out. If you're solo, open the doors as before, activate the trial, then wait for the shadows to move out of the path. Quickly stack the dash buff 3 times and activate turn-based mode. You should have enough movement speed to run all the way to the other end of the hall in 1 turn. Before entering the self-same trial, destroy the front door, then send in 1 character alone. If you remove all of your equipment before activating the trial, the clone will also have nothing on. After you start the trial, re-equip your gear and invite your friends in to join you. With the odds this comically stacked in your favor, you can just waltz in and wipe out the clone. Though you can sneak in if you really want to. Or you can forget about all of that, sneak in solo, and shoot the clone from max range at the bottom of the stairs without going into combat. Just make sure you're not too far up the stairs or your sneaky act will fail. To complete the Faith Leap trial, you can just click on the far platform to automatically walk to the end. It usually works, but you can sometimes trip at the finish line depending on exactly where you click. To be extra safe, you can use a potion of flying to fly between each platform. If you stop at the very top of the stairs, just inside the silence field, you can shoot the librarian without triggering combat. With it out of the way, just sneak in and surprise the justiciars. And if you still haven't used the bell to call on Flesh, this is a good time to put him to use, and kill him. When you've cleared the room, grab the Night Singer book from this shelf, press this button to open the gate, use the book, grab the spear and other goodies, and then head back to Balthazar's room. If you didn't already buy his potion of speed while talking to him, do that first before anything else, just in case something goes wrong. You want to start by clearing out any remaining skeletons. The ones around the edges of the room can be smacked from stealth. For the ones in front of the door, if you attack them from too close to the altar, you'll actually pull the ghouls along with them. That's actually one way of getting them out of there safely, but we'll get back to that. It's extra important not to fight right in front of the door, or Balthazar will join in on the fun. So just pull the skeletons from the middle of the room to take them out easily. With that done, stand far back from the door and fire an arrow of darkness at one of the ghouls to pull them out of the room and into combat without Balthazar. Make sure you kite them far away from the door before you attack with any melee. If you weren't able to get the bell from Balthazar, then Flesh will also join the fight along with the ghouls. And just like them, pull him as far away from the door as you can. Once the fight is over, pick up the ghoul bodies, use the strength club if you need to, and stash them somewhere that old Balth can't get at them, like this chest. But drop one of them at the end of the rug in front of the altar. Why? That's bait. Before actually fighting Balthazar, you can strip his legendary resistance by repeatedly casting the light cantrip on him. It won't cause him to go hostile no matter how many times you cast it, which is good because it's probably going to be a lot. Once he's used legendary resistance 3 times, it's gone for good. When you're ready to get the fight started, position one ranged character at the top of the stairs with the rest of the party in the far corner. Go into stealth and take a shot at Balthazar. If he wins initiative, he'll waste his turn dashing over to the bait ghoul and resurrecting it. Make sure the other party members go into stealth, then sneak on in and give him a good pummeling. You can even pre-cast grease in the doorway, and he's so eager to res that ghoul he'll run right into it. This makes it even easier to take him out. If you can't finish him off in a single turn, remember to keep the party members spread out to minimize cloud kill damage. Now, if you win initiative, don't use your extra attack against him on your first turn. If you do, Balthazar will activate Spectral Aspect, giving him the ability to fly, meaning he won't need to dash and he will be immune to the prone effects of grease. And finally, here comes the cheese. If you want to make Balthazar as easy as possible, we gotta rewind all the way back to when you first walked into the kitchen. Before you do anything else, avoid the skeletons and go down the hall to activate the fast travel point. Return to the skeletons and attack them from range to skip the umbral trimmers and keep the door to Balthazar's room locked. With the skeletons out of the way, use Misty Step to pass straight through the door. Once you're in here, you can attack Balthazar as much as you want and he won't fight back, he won't heal, and his undead pals will just stand around and watch. Just keep smacking him until he hits the floor, empty his pockets, then use that fast travel spot you unlocked to get out of the room. Simple as that. Oh, and speaking of cheese, you can skip any or all of the umbral crystals by going to the broken stairs in front of Yurgir's Hall and using Featherfall or Potion of Flying to jump down to the final door. Then just use Knock to open the door and activate the fast travel point for easy access.
I have felt you coming. The first in a century.
And you thought Karlach was pent up. As long as you have at least 40 approval with Shadowheart, you can spare the Night Song with no skill check required. In fact, you can even start the conversation as low as 30, since picking either of these top two options will give you plus 10 approval with her. Exactly how the conversation will go depends on if you have enough Night Song points, but either way, you'll end up with this option available that will always cause Shadowheart to spare her. What are Night Song points? It would take too long to explain right now, maybe some other time. And now we take a return trip to Moonrise. It's a good idea to ask Jaheira to join you just to keep her out of trouble. Walking through the main door will trigger the Harpers to all run in, so enter turn-based mode first to give you a chance to sneak in and get in some opening shots. Because of all the cultists you cleared out earlier, this fight will be heavily stacked in your favor. Though you can leave the Harpers to fend for themselves, climb the roots on the side of the building and skip straight to the top floor. But if you feel bad about not helping, you can sneak down from above and attack the back line while the Harpers deal with the front. These options do risk getting Jaheira killed, so keep that in mind. If you still haven't read the letter to Ketheric, now is the time to do it, if you plan to talk him down. You probably don't actually want to do that, but we'll cover that later. Put the group into stealth and send just one person up to talk to Ketheric. If you cast any spells during the conversation, you'll break your stealth. So if you really want to pass the persuasion check, cast any buffs you need before you go through the door. That way, when the conversation ends, you'll still be in stealth. Then you can send each of your other party members up there without putting them into combat, allowing you to get the drop on Ketheric with all of them. If you win the initiative roll, you can sneak them in and abuse him before he even leaves his starting platform. And if you're solo, you can just kite Ketheric around while he wastes his smites on Aelin. The Necromites that spawn from the pods during the fight will not go into combat with you unless you attack them directly. However, any Necros left alive at the end of the fight will go into combat with you as soon as the cutscene ends. You may be able to sneak away and drop combat to escape. Don't forget to long rest before heading into the Mind Flayer colony. And if you do have Necromites still hanging around on the roof, you only need to sneak one character past them to click the colony entrance and pull in the whole party. While wandering the halls, go ahead and kill every brain you see running around. They're easy XP, and they like to butt in while you're in the middle of larger fights. On that note, clear out the room where Us is being held captive to pick it up as a summon if you want, and also to clear an easy path to the Undead room. This choke point makes a great place for the party to drop their AoE damage on the ground and lure in the undead. With the right cleric setup, you don't even need a party. Look, I wish I had a secret method to give you for beating the brain puzzle, but at least you can see a solution here from lots of different angles. And don't forget to grab your prizes. In the room where Zevlor is held captive, it looks like there's no room to sneak attack the mind flayers that spawn, but there actually is space behind 3 of them to stash your party members before pressing the button to start the fight. When you attack them, they may turn to face you and cast Charm. If you had another character still hiding nearby, they will be seen before they get a chance to attack. Avoid this by delaying your extra attacks until each character has a chance to whack a mind flayer, or split the party members between 2 sides of the room. Zevlor can actually do some pretty decent damage, so leave him to handle the nearest target. The mind flayers only have a +1 initiative bonus, so if your button presser has at least +5, they will always go first, ensuring your sneaky plan goes off without a hitch. And of course, if you don't actually care about saving Zevlor, that XP reward for pushing the purge button is pretty tempting. Just in case you fail the skill checks at Mazora's pod, remember to connect your mind to the device on the right to free her. The restoration pod can only be used once, so before you take the elevator down, cast any long-term buffs you might have at your disposal, upcasting if you can. And finally, it's time to confront Ketheric. Again. If you persuaded him during the conversation on top of the tower, you will have the option to talk him into taking a dive. But if you actually succeed, you will immediately go into combat with Myrkul, as well as all of Ketheric's friends. We can do much better than that. And all it takes is a few items you probably have in your bags. A way to cast Darkness, the Eversight Ring from the Morgue, and the Club of Hill Giant Strength if your jump height isn't too impressive. Leave the rest of the party in stealth all the way back at the door and send a ranged attacker to hop up onto this ledge. Wait at this corner so you don't enter Ketheric's vision cone, then equip the Eversight Ring and cast Darkness right in the middle of the platform. Sneak on into the cloud and start shooting Necromites. When you trigger combat, Ketheric will pretend he's talking to the whole party, but they're still hiding back where you left them. While standing in the darkness cloud, the Necromites, Intellect Devourers, and even Ketheric himself cannot hit you. Only the Mind Flayer poses a threat, so prioritize killing it first. If it charms you, just switch to a target that is outside Ketheric's aura range. Ideally, you finish off the Mind Flayer while it's with you on the ledge, since you can take advantage of the darkness to get an easy damage, and if it dies there, it won't leave behind a Necromite pod. Just keep picking off any Gyromites or Brains that aren't inside the aura until they're all dead. If you do end up spawning a pod, the Nair Misser makes a great weapon for popping them, since they're resistant to piercing damage. And you always have a 100% chance to hit them, even with effects like Sharpshooter active. If your darkness runs out before you manage to eliminate every enemy, you may have to do a little dancing to avoid the brain attacks, but Ketheric still won't do anything as long as you stay on this platform. All that sounds good, but if the Mind Flayer actually manages to land a hit on you and your concentration breaks, things can go very badly very quickly. Don't worry, there's a solution for that. As long as you're not here solo, have one of your other party members cast Darkness on top of the ledge. Then return to their hiding spot. And just pull the same archer routine as before. Now, even if you do get hit by the Mind Flayer, the Darkness isn't going anywhere. It also frees up your concentration for other spells. Casting Darkness from out of combat like this also has other unexpected benefits. For some reason, the Darkness spell will often last longer than the 10 rounds it's intended to. And the Mind Flayer will sometimes decide to not fly up onto the ledge at all, leaving you free to fire away at him. I tested this many times and never found a pattern, so just enjoy the good luck if it happens. If the darkness cloud does run out as it should, and you had more than just that one scroll, you can sneak the other party member back in and just cast it again. If they get too close to the fight and cast it directly on your character, you may get pulled into combat. To avoid this, move the character to the edge of the platform first, then cast darkness on the empty space before moving them back into the cloud to hide. Once it's just you and Ketheric left, you have as many turns as you want to swap gear or attempt to cast debuff spells like Blind on Ketheric. You can just keep casting until it sticks, or until you run out of spell slots. But if you want a better chance of landing a debuff, you can wear the Helm of Arcane Acuity and stack up the buff while shooting all of Ketheric's underlings. And I suggested using Blind for good reason. Normally, if you sneak someone in at this point to free the Night Song, all party members will be pulled into the fight no matter how far away they are. However, if Ketheric is blinded when you help Aelin, your party's stealth will be removed, but only the character that freed her will end up in combat. If you send Scratch to help the Night Song while Ketheric is blind, none of your other party members will enter the fight, even Scratch himself. If you don't have the blind spell on your archer, that's just fine. Fire an arrow of darkness right on top of Ketheric to gain the same benefit. On his own turn, Ketheric will move out of it, but since you didn't end your turn, you can just switch over to Scratch and sneak him into place while Ketheric is stuck in the cloud. At the same time, you can position your other party members wherever you want and get ready to sneak attack Ketheric. Be aware that if you're not immune to blindness, stepping into the darkness cloud will actually pull you into combat. You can avoid this by attacking from the edge of the cloud. During the time you're finishing Ketheric, you can use this chance to start preparing for Myrkul, such as placing darkness effects on top of his spawn point. Also, any debuffs that are passively applied by items, like Reverberation, Reeling, or Radiating Orb, can be applied to Ketheric and they will remain on Myrkul when he spawns. The combination of Darkness Blind and Radiating Orb is especially potent, making it very likely that Myrkul will miss his melee attacks. Maintaining that darkness is important, since not only does it give him disadvantage on his attacks, but also prevents him from using Finger of Death or Gaze of the Dead, except as a reaction. Since he can't move, you can just keep him covered with Darkness, Hunger of Hadar, or even an Arrow of Darkness, though you will need to refresh it more often. And if you have room and concentration to spare, feel free to drop a Wall of Fire on top of him too. As mentioned, keeping Radiating Orb on Myrkul is very useful. Not every magic missile will make it past his magical plate to do any damage, but you only need a few to hurt him to keep the buff stacked. On top of that, it is possible to disarm Myrkul, but his legendary resistance works to make it unlikely. If you manage to strip his resistance with enough other debuffs like stuns, you may succeed. Heat Metal is the most potent disarm attack if you have it available. Even if it fails to disarm him, you can still use it for some bonus action damage, and it acts as a backup source of disadvantage on his melee attacks. It's very useful to dedicate one ranged attacker to popping any Necromite pods in range. Again, the Ne'er Misser is excellent for this task. Though remember how Scratch didn't go into combat when he freed the Night Song? If there are any pods that are far enough away from blinded Myrkul and any friendly character, Scratch can sneak around and bite them until they burst without being pulled into the fight. If he does attack one that is too close, well, he's still a good boy. If any Necromites do end up spawning, you can prevent them from healing Myrkul by applying your own Bone Chill effect, with the cantrip, an Arrow of Ilmater, or the most reliable way, the Doom Hammer. It's not a great weapon on its own, but anytime it hits, it applies Bone Chill. Even if you miss your attack, the Tenacity reaction will still apply the debuff, but only if it actually does damage. The damage that Tenacity does is based on your Strength modifier, so because Myrkul has 5 points of damage reduction, you will need at least 22 Strength to actually apply Bone Chill in this way. For actually taking Myrkul down, prioritize bludgeoning damage where you have it, and use the Ne'er Misser for ranged. It's especially useful for a rogue, since sneak attack inherits the damage type of the weapon used. Try to stay at cardinal directions to minimize scythe hits, and just plug away until he goes down. From this point, you can head to the right to continue on to Act 3, or you can hang a left to return to Act 1 for a refresher course. Whichever path you choose, thank you very much for watching.